All right, guys. Oh, look at that. The start. The starting's already messed it up. All right. Tonight, this is Total Disclosure Live, a special presentation. We're here with Teresa Tyndale. She's making her formal return to the show, if you will. And we'll be doing the lives again weekly. Tonight, we are going to be talking about the return of the Messiah. We broke a story a while back about 3 red heifers that were shipped from Texas to Israel. And Teresa talked to us about a prophecy of the third temple of Jerusalem. Now, could the people of Israel, Jerusalem specifically, be preparing for the return of a Messiah? And could that Messiah be extraterrestrial in nature? That's what we're going to talk about tonight. All that and more with expert in pre-industrial UFO sightings and religious scholar Teresa Tyndale, former state director and activist in the UFO field. How are we doing, Teresa?
Hey, it's great to see you again, Ty.
I hope I
Thanks
hit
for
all the
having me back.
keywords.
You
YouTube.
did. That was
All
great.
right. All
Yeah, and
right.
I
All
love
right.
that intro.
Yeah. It's good to have you back. We're not going to waste too much time, lollygagging because there is a lot to get to. And you and I have been talking behind the scenes about for weeks. I mean, ever since we talked about the 3 red heifers being sent to Israel from Texas, you had brought it up to me and kind of put it on my radar. And ever since then, the pieces kind of just slowly but surely started to fit into place. So, I'm like, so you and I are having these conversations behind the scenes, and we're just like, what is going on? And so maybe you could give us a little bit of insight on what the significance. So, I mean, what is the connection between the red heifers, the third temple, and the return of some sort of uh, messianic? I don't know if I'm saying that correctly.
Mhm.
Masonic figure, and could that figure be extraterrestrial? Has the name just changed over the centuries?
Well, yeah. So, if we look at things from a basically an ancient alien perspective, is what we're doing now. Um, it all starts to make sense, and you're able to really reconcile science with religion. And so these red heifers have to be sacrificed um, and cremated, and their ashes have to be used to purify anybody who is going to potentially work to build the third temple. Now, the significance of the temple is that it was Solomon's temple. King Solomon was the first one to build the temple, and it was literally, well, it's the holiest site now for both the Jews and the Muslims. But at the time, it was literally built to be God's dwelling place on earth. And so, if God is not of this earth, which by definition is extraterrestrial, we're talking about a place where they would go to meet with this other worldly entity. And it had to be so perfect. I mean, everything has to be, everything is very specific. The architecture, that people have to be purified before they can even walk on the site to build the new temple. And that's what these red heifers are for. They have to sacrifice them and use their ashes to purify anybody who's going to be on that site. And so inside of the temple, there was the holiest of holies. And that was the room behind the curtain where God, our other, our interdimensional, otherworldly God entity would dwell behind this curtain. I mean, we're not talking about a non-corporeal spirit. We're talking about a physical entity that needed its own space to be. And so the temple's been destroyed a couple of times. It was first sacked oh geez, I think it was the Babylonians in like 586 BC, and then it was reconstructed, and it was there during the time of Jesus. Yeah, and there's a red heifer. So the red heifers have to be perfect. I mean, this is very
I
this has
wanted to
been
bring it up
for
because
thousands of years.
yeah, you had mentioned that not only so I have it so not only do the priests and the land have to be purified, but even the tools used have to be coated or rubbed in the ashes of the heifers. And the heifer, so it's basically what it says is to sacrifice a red heifer without defect or blemish, and that has never been under a yoke. And that's from the Old Testament, book of Numbers 19. Now, what does that mean? And is that why they got three? Because they're looking for one with no blemish and whatever that means under the yoke. I'm not.
Yeah, so one that's never been worked, and they have to be a certain age.
Oh.
So one that's, when you put a yoke on them to work them and they're plowing a field, one that has never been yoked before, one that's never been worked. They have to be of a certain age, so they have to be 3 or under. And when they say perfect, that means they have to be perfectly red from nose to tail without a single white hair. They have to have every single, and they inspect them. They go and they inspect them. So they're very rare.
Clearly, this guy's a magnifying glass.
Yes, yeah. See, I mean, they inspect them. And this is ancient. I mean, this is like 3,000-year-old prophecy, and it's also 3,000-year-old scripture, of sacrificing these perfect red heifers. But they're so rare that you don't even really get the opportunity to have them. So the first one that was actually born in the early 1900s, there was a female. There was one born there, and her name was Melody. And that got everybody excited because they thought, oh, she's ushering in the end times, because that's really where we're going with this. So once they sacrifice these red heifers, then they plan to build the third temple. The problem is there's a structure already there. The Dome of the Rock is there, and that's the Muslim mosque, and that's also one of their holiest sites, because that's where Muhammad was taken up by God. And there you see it there. It's got the gold dome. I've always been interested in this gold symbology, this gold disc symbology, and it's got the gold dome there. So the big fight in the Middle East has always been that the Muslims built their mosque over the ancient site that was previously the Jewish holy site. And actually the Romans even had a pagan place there for a while. So I mean, we're literally talking about a physical place on Earth where an extraterrestrial being dwells. Like, that's the whole point of this. The whole point of the structure. And there's been some paranormal activity there. So when Jesus, the Christians would say that when Jesus was crucified, there was an earthquake, and the curtain between the holiest of holy rooms, split. And the Muslims say that that's where Muhammad ascended up to heaven. So we're talking about one of the most ancient spots on Earth with a lot of paranormal activity. And it continues even today. I mean, even in the past, I think it was 11 years ago, somebody got footage of a
Yeah.
light UFO, and it descended down over the
I'm gonna
dome.
show you.
It
I'm gonna
shot
show
up.
you. I'm gonna show that clip right now. There's multiple angles, all in the one video, and this is taking place right. I mean, if you don't scream to yourself divine after watching something like this, I mean, there's there's no helping you.
bueno, זה יורד למטה.
אתה מצלם? אתה רואה?
אני רואה מה זה.
תגיד, שותים יותר מדי?
לא, לא.
לא, לא, כולנו רואים את זה.
מה זה?
חמישה עיניים.
שיו!
וואו! מה
מה
זה?
זה, אמא?
מה זה? ראית?
יו בנברות.
ראית את זה?
תראה, יש שם עוד.
הנה, תראי שמה. מה זה?
אמא, לדור, אמא.
יש קבוצה שלמה שם, תראה.
So you can hear all of them exclaim at roughly the same time. The videos are synced I tried to sync them as best I could, but I mean, that's 4 different angles of the same UFO. And I know I've heard from people, all around the UFO community that those videos in particular have been debunked, but I feel like every UFO sighting video, has been claimed to be debunked as well. So with this one, I am torn because there's so many angles. I'm able to do something like that where I can take 4 different angles and basically sync them up to time. I mean, it's hard to do if you're hoaxing, to do something like of that nature. So clearly this part of the world, I mean, they've been at war inevitably since the creation of Israel, right? And the state of what do they call themselves? Is it a nation state?
I'm not entirely sure. I don't know about that, but they, yes,
It seems Israel has always had to defend itself from inception. They've had almost, if not every surrounding nation, literally invade at some point. Could this be because it's the center of humanity, and are they being prepared in a way that maybe others aren't?
Well, that's, so that's kind of what I'm starting to think is it possible that this is the last known extraterrestrial base on Earth? And, the oldest religions and the oldest societies, they know that. Oh, thank you. That's really nice of you to say. Thank you. Yeah, it's totally popping off. So, is it possible that this is the oldest extraterrestrial site on the Earth? The Jewish people know it, and then later on, the Muslims became aware of it because literally that's where Muhammad was. I mean, we could just say it, abducted. And then what happens after they build the temple? So the whole point of building the temple is to bring back the Messiah. Now, who is the Messiah? Like, who is this? Where does this entity come from?
Right.
This entity is not on Earth. So by very nature, it's an extraterrestrial entity. Is it interdimensional? Where is this entity coming from? And so, but they're willing to basically start a holy war over it. I mean, because once they're going to have to knock down the Dome of the Rock to build the third temple, and this really could start